Okay. So once again, good evening to all of you. And today we are going to start with the second part of the second domain, that is the IT management. So in the first domain, we understood the process of auditing the IT system. Now in the second domain, we are trying to understand the role that the management and the governance and the management should play in ensuring that IT is delivering what is promised. So we understood the governance process as such, which is usually starting with the setting the objectives. So clearly telling what it should be done and gives them the opportunities and the provision, and that is the organization structure, policies, etc., to ensure that they are done. And the process starts with setting the objectives, and immediately we understand that when the destination is clear, the path should be visible. So the path is what we call the strategy. So various, let us say, processes or methods are available, but COVID says that the method should be like EDM or EDDM, evaluating, determining, and directing and monitoring. Perhaps every other, let us say, certifications or maybe every other, let us say, philosophies will say this only. And here about the same thing, maybe the wordings may be different. At the end, this is how it should be done. And the management should ensure that the set objectives are achieved. So for that, they need to formulate a strategy, use the resources under their command, that includes the PPT, and ensure that the objectives are achieved. While doing so, they should ensure that like legal, regulatory, and other requirements are taken care, and organization policies are taken care, and most importantly, the information need to be adequately protected. That includes your CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And finally, achieve the objective by utilizing the optimal resources. That is what we call the efficiency and effectiveness. Primarily, the governance is the responsibility of the senior management. The accountability is with the board of directors. So senior management are also responsible for implementing the governance program in an organization, because you cannot expect a governing body such as the board of directors to be directly involved in the business. That is a stamping of the authority of the board of the management, which should not happen. So the board entrusts the responsibility of implementing the governance process with the management. So to that extent, the management becomes accountable to the board of directors in executing the. So in that case, the corporate governance and the business governance both are the responsibility of the senior management, and they are accountable to the board of directors. Ultimately, the BOD are responsible for the entire organization. That includes the objective setting, protection of the assets, and ensuring that the laws, regulations, and the external requirements are complied with. So in the first part, we understood the various governance process, that is the objective setting process. And we understood that from the objective setting process, how an organization moves forward in understanding the strategy. So we understood that from the objectives comes the strategy. Once the strategy is clear, we know that there is a logical roadmap exists. All needs to be done is that convert the logical roadmap into a implementable one, and the senior management follows the process called the PBRM: plan, build, run, and monitor various activities. Once done properly, will ensure that objectives are achieved. But objective achievement is not something which is a straightforward method. You have constraints in it. The constraints are like timelines. The constraints include availability of the resources. Timeline include your budget amount available. At a time, the constraints most very importantly includes the external requirements like legal, regulatory, and contractual requirements. So in that case, what the senior management should do, they should leverage the business and the corporate governance functions. So that means they should ensure that there is an adequate strategic alignment should happen. Now, strategic alignment can happen only if you have a proper framework implemented. A framework guarantees that every activity undertaken is aligning with the strategical objectives of the organization. At the same time, the senior management is ultimately responsible for the risk or whatever activities they undertake. So the risk management also is the senior management's accountability, and the framework again encourages the proper risk management methodology. And apart from that, you need to ensure that an independent mechanism by which whether the initiatives taken by the senior management had been achieved or not is the way you and me do. That is the assurance process. That is independent assurance, the third line of defense we call it. And all these things to necessary to do what? To ensure that the IT resources are adequately managed and the performances are monitored, and finally whether the value is created or the benefits are realized. This is the idea behind the management and governance. So far, we have seen the governance part, how the various governance activities are carried out. From the strategy comes your policies for each and every strategy, and each and every policy element should be addressed with a standard that will ensure that the policies are complied with. A standard could be internal, a standard could be external, a standard could be simple, or a standard could be a complicated one. An organization may, in fact, implement a strategy for a certification purpose, or an organization may use a portions of a standard as a, let us say, a bellwether, or maybe a kind of a standard, some kind of a, let us say, industry standard, this thing, applicable things, etc. So everything depends upon the management. Apart from that, you need to have a proper procedures in place, and the day-to-day activity, the procedures should align with the standard, and that will ensure that the policy is taken care. And to all do all these things, there has to be decisions taken, and the organization should run. So there has to be a proper organization structure. So we saw about what are the roles and responsibilities right from the beginning: the board of directors, the senior management, the committees, the strategy and the steering committees. Apart from that, the CIO and the CISO role. CIO role, we did not see much about it because primarily the CIO role is to ensure that IT department is managed. So there's nothing much more to do about it. But the CISO role is very important because as an auditor, you are worried about the security of the information. Apart from that, other rules, then how the various processes are measured and how the information security is evolved. Information security governance that comes from your risk management process. We also had a glimpse about how enterprise risk is managed. Then, as a process, information technology and the information security and the governance for the organization IT governance should evolve and improve. So that methodology we saw that is your CMMI. And apart from that, what are the organization, the legal regulatory requirement that an organization should take care? That also we saw. So that is the first part of it. And the second part is all about the resource management. So when you talk about the resource management, we start with the identification of the IT resources. Then apart from that, nowadays, if you look at almost every organization try to outsource certain activities. We are going to talk about more about outsourcing when we hit upon that area. So that is also a resource management. Whether the resources are inside your organization or whether those services are provided by an external agency, at the end of the day, they are resources. So the service provision, acquisition, and management is also a proper, it also be adequately managed because it is also a resource. And when it comes to whether the IT, PPT, the people, process, and technology, including your service providers, do they provide adequate value to the organization? That is the performance monitoring. So the resources are optimally utilized, they provide adequate performance. And finally, we are also going to see the quality assurance and quality management of IT. So these are the things we are going to cover today, and most probably we'll be covering it a bit quicker. Not many topics are there in that. So before we proceed with the, let us say, the classes today, I have a proposal for you. See, well, we will be finishing it faster, maybe slightly an hour early, maybe. So I have around 50 questions with me from the first and second domain compiled. Either we can see that or we can start with the third domain. So what is your choice?
Shall we discuss? Yeah.
No, I didn't get you.
Shall we discuss? Yeah, questions.
I want us to go with it.
No, I didn't get.
I think, Srini, what we can do is we can try and do the 50 questions so that we are at least thorough with the first and second domain,
Correct.
and then
Okay.
we can go to the third domain.
Yeah.
So your idea is to do the questions. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
To do the questions.
Okay, so do the questions. Okay, fine. So once we finish the portions, then we are going to do the questions today. And after that, we will do it the second domain. Okay, no issues.
Yeah.
Thanks, Srini.
Okay, so we can just give me a second, please.
Sorry. Tell me.
No issues. No issues.
Hmm. No. Please.
Hmm. Okay, so let us come to the classes now. IT resource management. So if you look at, we can see on the right side, I put up that particular picture specifically searching in the internet for some time. An IT manager has to do this many things. I should do a lot of juggling. He should have that many hands to manage things. So the IS auditor, if you look at, has to understand an organization's investment and allocation practices to determine whether the enterprise is positioned to achieve the greatest value from the investments of its resources. And that is the primary aim of the IT governance and management. That is to ensure that the investments in the IT is providing value. See, if the investments in IT are not providing value, you are losing the money. Better the money can be spent elsewhere. Nowadays, many organizations are thinking about it. That is the reason why the argument goes about like whether you should have a in-premises IT or you should outsource it, like cloud. So because having an in-prem IT is going to have a lot of problems or headaches for the organization. Because if you look at, ladies and gentlemen, what is the primary, let us say, the duty of the senior management? I'm talking about the CEO or his team. What is the primary duty? Why they are there?
To make sure the objectives have to be
Achieved. Or let us say that they need to ensure that the business is run properly, right?
running properly. That's correct.
Yeah, and they are subject matter experts in the business they are running, right?
Right.
And they don't have the expertise in IT. That is why they put up an IT department and an appointed head for that. Am I right?
Yes, please. That's implies to every domain. They
Every
have
domain, absolutely.
they have subject
But
matter experts.
absolutely. That is why we have the subject matter experts for legal, HR, finance, then manufacturing, all those things. To a certain extent, the senior management may be experts in business sales or some to certain extent productions or maybe finance also. But when it comes to IT, how many of you gentlemen have seen that apart from the IT enabled services domain, how many of you think that how many senior managers, CEO level, they are IT savvy? Yes, gentlemen.
Very less. Only sometimes in IT specific organizations. Only.
Maximum
what
in
I
IT
said.
only.
That is what I said. When we say IT enabled services, other than that, those people are not going to be subject to experts in IT. Now, we have a problem when it comes to IT. When I say we, all the IT fraternity, we actually talk only IT jargon. We do not try to go to the management and talk to about their jargon. And not only to the senior management, for anybody. And what happens is that there is a natural kind of a rippling force between the IT and the other departments. And the other departments would not like to show themselves that they don't know something. It's like kind of an ego, even for the senior management. So what they do, they ignore IT. And IT is also not adding any, let us say, value to that. They also they put the oil to the fire. So incidentally, what happens? IT is not providing getting the prominence. IT initiatives are not as per the organization requirement. Or IT and the business do not talk to each other, do not understand each other. And finally, the senior management has to intervene on each and every IT related issue, and they have to understand the issues, and they have to ensure that the IT provides value. It takes so much of time out of their activity, that is the business development activity, and they have to keep trying to solve the IT problems. No CEO will like that. What in that case, what they do? Okay, if I have to spend so much money, put so many people here and so many process here, and at the end, I have to put so much of my efforts to work on this. Let me not have it. Let it be managed by the people who know how to manage. Let me outsource it. Why are the entire IT department outsource it? Or what will happen? So this is what's going to have nowadays happening. This is because mainly consolidation. At the same time, IT themselves are put inside it because IT never ever bothered to discuss with this thing. IT expected that the business understand IT, but IT never bothered to themselves to educate about the business. They never understood what the business problems are. They always want about their problems, and that prompted the business to look at something else. That is what the outsourcing is all about. At the same time, I'm not saying that like IT is to be only blamed. It's about the business managers also. So everything put together, there is a confusion here. So the only thing is that in this particular scenario, how do you think that IT can show that they are valuable to the organization? So a traditional measurement methods like a financial measurement, how much you saved. For example, there is a manual operations going on and some 7, 8 people have been doing that and you automate it thoroughly and that can be done with one single person. That means 7 people's, let us say, the cost of the manpower can be reduced. At the same time, accuracy can be increased. At the same time, the speed is increased. That's very good. Absolutely right. But not that every time you can measure the IT performance in the monetary terms. It's not possible. But means that IT doesn't provide value? Absolutely provides value because there are so many things that IT provides that is not visible. For example, let us say customer satisfaction. Now, because of a very highly robust automated process, the business themselves are able to do processes far better and far accurate and far faster, and they are highly satisfied. And you cannot put a monetary or a dollar value for the satisfaction. And ability to innovate. See, one thing, a presence of IT ensures that you are able to innovate or able to bring the processes far quicker. And in a very competitive environment we are living in now, the organization can utilize or leverage the value of IT and ensure that IT provides value to the business. Again, this innovation, and because of that, the business satisfaction, you cannot put a dollar value for that.
We need like to add one
Yeah,
thing.
please.
The
Yeah,
real
please.
life example is pandemic, where all the people are working from home. This is possible through IT only, which
Absolutely.
made complete organization work from home, and they are back
Absolutely.
on track. So
Absolutely.
they did work 24/7.
Yeah, that is what I'm trying to say. See, there has to be some kind of a, let us say, uh, 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 a kind of a measurement that actually captures the value of IT, not only in the financial domain, but in other domains. We are going to talk about that at the end of this particular domain. We are going to look at the IT balance scorecard. It is called the balance scorecard. Why? Because it's balanced. Not only looking at on the, what you say, the financial angle, but other angle. The second bullet point is something of the sort only, but ISACA is contradicting themselves. Let us not worry about it. What ISACA says here is that, like, even if you're not able to actually put a dollar value to that, put some kind of a formula to show some dollar value. Okay, just leave it aside. You're not going to get any questions out of that, but I don't agree with the statement of ISACA. That is different, my opinion only. So now let us look at the various elements which compromises your IT resources. Primary resources in your IT department is your manpower, HR. See, the people, the process and technology may be there. So how do we define the PPT as an asset? So if you look at the PPT, the people, the process and the technology. The people use the processes and exploit the technology to deliver value to the business. So the people should use the process. Let us say that like IT department, the people, that is the technology persons, develop the applications. So they develop the application, the people, and the application called, let's say, HR or maybe say purchasing or whatever it is, that they use it, that runs on the technology, the infrastructure and the platform that deliver value to the business. So all the three elements should be present. So these two elements are, let us say, non-living things can be easily controlled. The most difficult things to control is the people. So you should have a robust policies, a robust standards, a robust methodology by which you get the right people inside your organization. So many a times, if you look at when it comes to IT security, if you look at, they always say that the people or the human beings are the weakest link in any security chain. Absolutely right. And if you look at, the people are susceptible to some type of attacks, which, I mean, the technicals, let us say, assets cannot be subjected. For example, social engineering attack and the frauds. This can be committed only by human beings. A machine will not commit a fraud, or let us say, a machine cannot be socially engineered. So these are sometimes a specific risk associated with the human beings, which should be addressed by the HR department. Very simple. So mainly, what are the reasons for which this thing can happen? One, the HR, not or HR and IT together, not recruiting the right talent for the right job. So many a times, what happens is that, like, you identify the person, he brings a skill set, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you take this person and try to find out what are the 4, 7, 6, 2. These are the skill sets required. Okay, this guy is having 4, this guy is having 2 or 2 here. Then I try to put something here and train here. I like that. What happens is that we are trying to fill in the position with what the persons have, rather than looking at I need skill set this 1, 2, 3, and try to get a person who is having at least 1 and 2, or maybe 4, 5. Then let me try to fix in 3 here, and I can take it. This is not done. Most of the organization, if you look at, go to the IT department, ask them about the requirement, what are the skill sets required, do they have the skill metrics? They will ask you as if you ask something very, very bad question. They don't understand what you're talking about because they don't have the skill metrics, the skills metrics with them. That is, they haven't done their analysis properly. And what are the first and foremost, you have to understand the jobs, what jobs are required. Then regarding on that job, what are the talent required, what are the requirements. On that basis, you have to develop the skill set or skills metrics, and on that basis, you have to select a person. Rather, every organization does exactly opposite. They bring the person and they try to match the person to a skill rather than matching the skill to a person, which is a wrong attitude. At the same time, what can happen? The person may be, apart from the skill set issue, the person may not be trustworthy, like may have a criminal background. And sometimes many evaluation methods are there, like, many testings are there. Background checks can be done, but again, they have a limited, let us say, limited impact on the organization. At the same time, once an employee is onboarded, then a question is that, like, there is always a pressure. So there will not be enough time given by the HR department or given to the HR department by the departments to onboard the employee properly. Onboarding means making sure that the employees are completely aware about all the activities that are happening in the organization, do's and don'ts, and the policy standards and procedures, so that that person knows what can be done, what should not be done. And that lack of listing is going to have a major impact. At the same time, the lack of, let us say, confidentiality requirements may also lead to the compromise of the overall security environment. So when you talk about the people, you have to talk about the people in your organization as well as the third-party service providers. See, many a times the third-party service providers employees may not have the loyalty to your organization. Their loyalties with their organization who will pay their service. So if something happens to your organization, they may not own it to that much. So that has to be factored in. So what, apart from that, once a person is onboarded, when the person is actually serving inside the organization, the life cycle you should see. Onboarding, reduction, then working, then let us say job rotations, promotions, then finally either termination or a retirement or separation. So this is the life cycle of an employee. And during the life cycle, there are many activities taken by the organization themselves may create some kind of a heartburn for the employees, like a lack of a transparency in the promotional policies, a kind of giving a feeling to the employee that he may not be treated properly. See, the problem starts with everybody. The employee may be also at an issue or maybe a problem. At the same time, the employer also may be a problem. So wherever the employers can do, they have to ensure that these kind of things are taken care, like having a proper promotion policies, transparency. And again, the issue is that, like, adequate trainings are given and enforcement activities are done. So many things that can be done. Those are the management responsibilities That to certain extent can ensure that the people, the HR, that is the human beings, are properly taken care. One of the issues usually associated with HR when it comes to the problems is that attrition. IT department is well known, or IT industry is well known for the attrition rates. People don't stick. They try to always look for a greener pastures and keep moving. So organizations do have this particular issue to tackle. That is, they should ensure that the skill sets are retained, at least the knowledge is retained. So job rotation is one way by which you can do that. Or sometimes the organization may want to avoid all this confusion and straight away go for outsourcing also. At the same time, when you go for the job rotation, you should keep in mind that SOD controls are not violated. That is, we saw the question, right? No one single person should have the complete knowledge of the complete, let us say, the transaction flows. Otherwise, that could be a single kind of a inducement for the employee to commit a fraud. So next is termination
Srini, one
policy.
question.
Yeah,
In the
please.
last slide, there was one point saying that the IS auditor should ensure the IT organization has well-defined policy.
Yeah, that is always the promotion. The same thing I covered, right? Promotion policy. They should be transparent. They should be well distinct.
But like, why IS auditor should be involved into that? Like,
No,
didn't
IS
understand
audit,
the link over there.
no, IS auditor should ensure that they are doing the audit on that area.
But that is like depending on the company, right? Why is it like from audit perspective you have to look into that?
No, I didn't understand. See, an auditor can do an HR audit also, right? What stops him?
Okay.
See, it's a vulnerability. See, the organization policies are opaque. There's no proper promotion policies, and the promotions are any, let us say, any HR, let us say, activities are done for the whims and fancies of some people in the organization. Don't you think that's a major problem for the organization that the auditor should point to?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, that is always there, right? So, see, many times what happens? How many times you heard any of your colleagues or friends or whomsoever saying that like bad both in the organization, at the same time saying that like I have not been passed over for a promotion. So many things do happen, right?
Correct.
So as I told you, the problems are not only with the employee. Employers also many times are, let us say, because at the end of the day, they are all people. People are subject to, let us say, subjectivity. I mean, there's no objectivity over there. See, that is the reason why you need to have a very strong HR function. The HR management should take care. So the HR management should actually force the department to do the proper evaluation, what we call the 360-degree assessment. Tell me how many of your organization they do the proper 360-degree assessment of your thing. Tell me how many of your organization in the promotion policies bias is not in. Am I right? So what will happen if the bias is there? One, the resources which deserve the recognition, either they may go away, that means still the organization may be losing the good resource, or they may stay back and they may start doing something for the against the organization. That is very bad, and that the organization should realize. But again, that is absolutely a psychological and a HR related discussion, which is not part of our classes here. I'm just giving that an HR auditor, an auditor should also look at the practices to ensure that there is a transparency in the process. That's it.
Okay, got it.
Apart from the termination policies, so when a termination happens, what the more important thing, the assets of the company with the employee or the terminator person should be recovered ASAP. So that is one thing that should be taken care of. A person may be having a bring your own, or maybe he may having a mobile company devices with him, access cards, maybe some USB drives, anything, whatever we may be having that. Apart from that, there should be a proper notification to the people that this person is no longer with us. So ensure that that guy doesn't come inside the organization again, because he doesn't have the authorization to enter. At the same time, again, you have to ensure that his dues are paid, so he don't go to the labor court and let us say that he complains agent, you are not paying the money to them. And ensuring that like the accesses, that all the accesses, those things are removed, so that whether physically or logically, that person cannot create a problem for the organization. So that is the idea behind the termination policies. We are looking at the company part of view, not at the, we are not the HR people here, we are not the labor department. So we are looking at the organization part. Apart from the change management, see, one thing you should understand in an organization, the changes are going to be there one thing which is going to be common. Every day changes going to happen. And in IT, the changes are more pronounced. See, every year the versions will change. I mean, you know that like Apple brings a product every year. Every year there's a change involved. Right from the initial iOS version, I don't know what number they gave it for it. Right now, I think iOS version is 14 point something. I don't really know. And Android is 11. If I'm right, I don't know whether I'm still right or not. So that the versions and the changes keep on happening. And the change management is something which not only looking at the IT changes, but overall organization change. Many organizations do have something, a mature organization talking about, they have something called a change management board. Every change has to be a major changes, material changes, I would say, not the minor changes, has to go through the committee. And all the stakeholders should sit and understand the changes, and accordingly they should take the corrective actions. Because a change in one area may have an impact on the other areas also. So the stakeholders present together analyze that what are the various changes required and how is it going to affect, and accordingly the controls has to be redesigned. So when it comes to IT, if you look at infrastructure and application level, the changes keeps happening. Not only application, infrastructure, application, platforms also. Like infrastructure, we talk about the physical hardware. We keep changing them because of obsolescence. Platforms, operating system, how many patches, how many version changes, upgrades. Application. Do you think that once you develop an application for the next 5 years, without touching the application, you're going to run that application? Can anyone say that?
No.
Application maintenance. Suddenly you keep on changing, the requirements keeps on changing. You have to add them, remove them, add some functionality, remove some functionality, augment it, add something, let us say some regulatory issues coming up. So the changes are going to be permanent. If you look at one thing when it comes to most of the changes is actually it is driven by IT. So IT can take a lead in this and drive the change management process. See, one thing is that IT is omnipresent, present everywhere. So when IT taking the lead and understanding the change properly, analyzing the change and drive the process with the support of the senior management and with the business process owners, that means there's a proper process. Once the changes are identified, analyzed, and a committee is discussing about it, then the implementation parts happen. During the implementation, the testing, we are not going to see that implementation here, we are going to see in the fourth domain. But once the changes are done, the communication becomes very important. Because a change in one area may have an impact on other areas also. So whomsoever is affected by the change should be communicated about the change circumstances so that they are aware. And the end users also must be impacted the impact of the changes, because sometimes they may have to do certain things in a different way and they should be aware about it. And another important factor which many organizations I have not seen implementing is a feedback. See, a change, when you talk about the communication, immediately you should always have a feedback mechanism. Whatever you communicate, even when you do the, let us say, security awareness training, that is a communicating the importance of security to the people who are undergoing the training. So what is the feedback mechanism in that case? Getting the opinions from the, let us say, employees, how many of them are attended. And another way by which you take a feedback is doing a, let us say, phishing attacks, a targeted or a simulated phishing attacks against employees to know whether they are understood or not. So these many things, always the feedback is important. So user feedback should be obtained throughout the project, including the validation of the business requirements when it comes to the project management, change management in a project, and training on the testing of the new changes or functionality. This is specifically, the last bullet point is specifically actually targeted towards the system development lifecycle process, where when the system being developed, the changes happen during the testing phases or the development phases, what we call sometimes scope creep, etc. How they are addressed is given here. Apart from that, everything in an organization at the end of the day works for this money. So financial management becomes a very important element in the management of your resources. So finance is a very, very important resource. So highest budget. Actually, the way we do the budgeting, if you remember in the initial stages when we did the objective analysis process, how we did, that is understanding the budget, that is what are the revenues, where the revenues are going to come from, what are the expenses involved in it, And when you actually look at IT strategic alignment with the business, it is what the business want, and accordingly, IT should support it. How can IT support it if you don't give the money? So again, the financial management. So IT will be given adequate budget for two reasons, as I told you. One is for the capex, another is for opex. So the IS budget allows for adequate allocation of funds for the forecasting, monitoring, and analysis of financial information when it comes to IT. And at the same time, the budget should be linked to short and long plan. That is what you got the capex and opex. And if you look at IT, usually or not usually, always is the supporting partner. By themselves, they don't do anything for themselves. They only do for the users. So ideally speaking, the IT expenditure should be charged back to the users. Many organizations have this kind of a user pay schemes wherein some kind of a methodology, some kind of a formula will be used, number of transaction, head count, or processing time usage, maybe whatever is agreed among the organizations. On that basis, the expenditure of the organization, the IT department expenditure is actually allocated to the user department. So that this way, every user will know they should use IT only for the genuine purposes, not unnecessarily for frivolous purposes. And these charges can be based on some kind of a standard agreed upon formula that the steering committee will decide. Apart from that, you have to also look at the information security, also another resource. The information security management provides the lead role in ensuring that the information processing resources under its control are adequately protected against the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So when it comes to availability, the resilience, you need to ensure that there is a proper BIA, BCP, DRP, and incident response plan, etc. need to be there to ensure that IT continue to provide support even in case of any disruptions. So one of the major component when you want to develop those kind of, let us say, the DRP, BCP program is the risk management. So risk management also becomes a precursor for your information security management. We saw that already, how the risk management process feeds into the risk assessment, and from there you're going to understand the ranking of the risk, and adequately on that basis only you are going to create your, let us say, information security management. So when it comes to, let us say, DRP or BCP, what is a BCP? Business continuity plan. So what do you do in a business continuity plan? We are trying to have a plan that even if something happens to the business, there's a continuity encouraged or guaranteed by having this plan. Then the continuity is on what? We are not going to continue all the 100% operations. We are going to continue only the critical processes. How do we know what is critical? Again, you have to do the BIA, business impact analysis. Business impact analysis will give you the critical processes, but what is the likelihood that any threat may act on a vulnerability that can be identified by only your risk management? On that basis, only you have to go to create a control, and the BCP is one such control. It's a preventive or it's a corrective. So the major component in establishing such program is the risk management principles to assess the risk and IT assets and mitigate the risk to an appropriate level as determined by the senior management, which we call the risk appetite levels or risk acceptance levels. Apart from that, as I told you, the next important thing is that acquiring the service provider. See, one of the things when you talk about the service provision is you can have many forms. It could be insourced, that is the entire IT department can be in premises. It could be outsourced. It could be a hybrid model. And based upon whatever model is selected, it can be on-site. The vendors can come inside your organization and be working there. Or they may work from their site called off-site, or maybe offshore, maybe another country. These are the various models which are prevalent in the industry right now. So whenever you want to go for the IT service function, outsourcing it, you should be very clear about what function you should want to outsource it. So this definition of the IT function is very important, because many a times, many organizations would like to take the IT outsourcing as a tactical decision, which is absolutely wrong, because you are effectively reconfiguring your value chain. You are effectively reconfiguring IT department and identifying those areas which you don't want to retain and give it to somebody else. Means you think that those areas which are outsourcing are not your core competency, are subject to diversity. And that means they should be having the methods and balance, checks and balances to ensure that those activities also provide value. And to do that, you should ensure that a strategic decision has to be taken. Like, for example, how the connectivity will go. The governance will completely change because you're bringing a third party, whether they understand your security, then how they are going to connect your system, whether their system and your system are going to be compatible, what are the changes to enterprise architecture to be required, how much that they should be trusted. There are so many issues to be addressed. So it is not a tactical decision, it is a strategic decision. And secondly, you should know very clearly what is the expert or service you are getting from or supposed to get from the service provider. That is your service level metrics or SLEs. At the same time, whether the service provider has the knowledge, skills, and expertise to provide that particular services to you on an uninterrupted manner. Sometimes you may go beyond and understand whether this service provider is in the business for long or what is his longevity. For example, you go to a person and in 2 years that guy files for a bankruptcy and goes away. You may have to chase another service provider, which is going to be time and cost ineffective. So there are various analysis that should go, a strategic analysis should go before you zero in on an outsourcing option. And second, once you identify that, yes, these are the areas which are not core competency for me, which is a candidate for outsourcing, and the decision is taken to outsourcing. And now you are trying to find out the partners who can provide the jobs for you. Everything comes with a cost. So there's going to be a quotations for your request for proposals. But how do you know the cost or the price quoted by the service providers are correct or not? That means you should benchmark it with something. The best way to benchmark is that what could be the in-premises cost if the same activity has to be done inside your organization. So any quotation or any offer should be lesser than that. That is a, you can say, a kind of a ballpark kind of value you can put in. At the same time, once you are zeroed in on a particular or one of your service providers, the next is your due diligence to be done. Due diligence is nothing but discovering each other's capabilities. So you are going to trust with that guy, and that guy is going to trust you. Now there's going to be a kind of a marriage of convenience going to happen. Whether both are complete count, the systems are compatible, people are compatible, the processes are compatible. 100% compatibility can never be there. So there should be customization. How much you should customize, how much the service provider should customize. Most of the time, the service providers may not customize because the problem is that they are not going to serve only you. They may serve many other clients also. So they cannot keep customizing for every client. So that means you may have to cut corners over there somewhere. And how much is going to affect your organization? And how much is going to ensure that your organization, enterprise architecture may have to change because you're bringing in another element inside. So these things are actually taken care by the due diligence. So last is the architectural consideration. Again, when there are any changes to be done to the enterprise architecture. So outsourcing practices and strategies. See, outsourcing is the mechanism that allows the organization to transfer the delivery of a services to third parties. Usually this delivery will be a non-core competency. So you should understand what is a core for you, what is non-core for you, and make that non-core for eligible for your or a candidate for outsourcing. The question is the transparency and ownership of the decision-making process. See, whatever the decision to be made on the outsourcing process and the transparency, the laws, regulations, and requirements should be with you. Just because you outsource your activity to somebody else, that means you're not actually taking your liability out to the third party. So you're still liable. So that ownership should be with you. So the decision to outsource is a strategic decision, as I told you. It's not merely a procurement decision. Many organizations do that. They have entire IT department set up, and after a thought, they say, okay, let us outsource this. That is not a right way to do. If you are going to outsource, decide to outsource it, right from the time you're setting your department, you know, these are the candidates that can be outsourced, then let us not do it. So that you can define your architecture clearly. So the organization that outsources is effectively reconfiguring the value chain by identifying activities that are core to the business, as I told you, and making the non-core activities as a candidate for outsourcing. So if the organization understand which parts of the business truly create a competitive advantage, only then it is going to be a win situation for you. Otherwise, it's a loss for you. Initially, tactically, you may get some gains, but in the longer run, strategically, you may lose. So in this case, what happens is that like the outsourcing practice relate to the contractual agreements under which the organization actually hands over a part or all of the functions of the IT department to an external party. So in that case, what the contractor does, they provide the MPPT, the people, process, and technology, and the expertise to perform the agreed on services. The agreed on services are codified in the service level agreements or service level management or whatever you call it. So nowadays, outsourcing is becoming increasingly important in many organizations. As I told you, why? Because the senior management nowadays are thinking that they had enough of problems taking care of the IT issues. They don't want to have IT issues anymore. Let us get it outside. Let them manage it. So the IS auditor must be aware of the various forms of outsourcing can take and the associated risk. We saw that in the beginning, right? It could be in premises, it could be let us say their premises, it could be like a part, it should be full, it could be let us say within the country, outside the country, various forms it can take. So the goal, the objective is to achieve a lasting and a meaningful improvement in the business processes. So at the end, what actually happen is that like the business process which you have been done already, there should be some kind of an improvement either in the form of the efficiency or the cost or both. That should be beneficial for the organization. You are not here to do a charity for a third party who is doing an outsourcing service. There should be a benefit for you. There should be a benefit for him. Unless both the parties are benefited, outsourcing is not a success. So that means the goal is to achieve lasting, meaningful improvement in the business process and service through corporate restructuring to take advantage of the vendor's core competency. So mainly, if you look at the vendor, actually is the person who is providing the services a subject matter expert, and let them do his job. Let us do our job. That is increasing the business. Just give me a couple of minutes. Sorry, somebody's at the door. Let me answer. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Okay, now let us look at the outsourcing practices and strategies. So once you decide that yes, you're going to go towards that outsourcing route, you should ensure that the management should actively manage the relationship. It's not that the senior management contracts and signs off the contract and say, hey guys, we manage it. Tata bye bye, I'm not going to look at anything. It's not that way. You need to ensure that like this relationship is managed. Any relationship that is not managed or governed properly is going to have a hot button later. So the IS auditor should regularly review the contract and the service levels to ensure that they are appropriate. There are many things that can happen between the company. See, the issue is that you may have a SLA that may never be monitored, or you may have an SLA that is not properly drafted, or there may be issues which never be resolved, or there could be like issues that there may be always issues between the service provider and the service receivers. So management of outsourcing is a complex activity. That is why outsourcing is not only a cost decision, it is a strategic decision that has the significant control implication. As an audit angle, as a security angle, you are losing actually the control of the activity from your side. Please understand you are still liable. You are accountable for the activities being done by the third party. Now you are answerable to somebody for the activities done by somebody else. Then how do you ensure that somebody else is controlled? So that means the significant control implication has to be understood by the management, and you need to ensure that there's a separate governance process for it. So the decision to outsource a particular service currently within the organization demands the proper attention to the contract negotiation. See, many a times, any of you are involved in the contract negotiation process or SLA, etc. One thing we'll all apparently understand is that the involvement of the information security. Most of the time, they will be involved as an afterthought, or when the contract is ready for signing, just because they want to show some favor and they'll give it to the security people. That is an absolutely wrong thing, because a security has to be built inside a process. If the security is not something that is an afterthought, it is a process which has to be built in. So the SLAs, the service level agreements stipulate and commit a vendor to a required level of a service and support options. And whether these required levels have been adequately addressed in the document, the audit is verified. So the service level agreements are a contractual means of helping the IT department to manage the information resources that are under the control of a vendor. So the IT is going to manage the services that is going to be provided by somebody else. That is the idea behind your outsourcing in a simpler manner. So the outsourcing requires that the vendor comply with all the relevant legal and regulatory requirements, including those that are going to be enacted after the contract initiation also. It happens because the laws and regulations keeps evolving and the activities also keeps evolving. So there has to be a constant, let us say, commitment from the vendor side that all the legal and regulatory, let us say, requirements are met. At the same time, you need to ensure that the ownership of the intellectual properties, if you are entering into the contract for a development of an application or product, then warranty maintenance period, escrow provisions, then intellectual property rights, legislation compliance, all those things need to be properly codified. And there should be a clear roles and responsibilities of the parties depending upon who should do what. So we are not even getting to cloud. In fact, we are going to look at the cloud computing only at the end of the fifth domain, near about the end of the fifth domain. And that itself is a very complex subject. We are not even getting to that. Even we are just looking at a simple outsourcing. The cloud computing outsourcing is an extremely complex one. And require that the vendor follow the organization's policies, including the security policies. See, when you talk about the security policies, it is about the information security requirements based upon the risk assessments and the level of controls you should have. You may have a specific level of a control for a particular threat you are envisaging. So the vendor may have a similar kind of a, let us say, a setup wherein he may have his own security. So there is no hard and fast rule that says that like you should only insist your security policy on the vendor. And if the vendor is having a security policy and if you are able to verify that and found it okay, it is also better that you can accept the vendor's policies. Many a times it is found that the vendor has a better security policy than you, because primarily what they do is that they actually service multiple clients. So security is a very important element for me. And requires the vendor to identify all the subcontract relationships and requiring the organization approval to change the subcontractors. See, in the normal practices, it's okay, but in case of a cloud computing, this is extremely complex. So let's not get into that because that is something a discussion for something else. For example, you are actually appointing a vendor for, let us say, software development, or maybe he is doing the, let us say, development activity or some maintenance activity. And how do you know that he is not outsourcing the programmers for somewhere else? Maybe that integrators, maybe API coders, or maybe somebody else. So that means what happens is that within your outsourcing, there's another outsourcing there. That another guy may have another outsourcer there. So if you look at the matrix goes on. So one of the important requirement when it comes to the, let us say, contract is that the contract provision should clearly say that in the given circumstances, whatever operations that the subcontractor is doing for you, whether he has subcontracted any portion of that activity to somebody else. So usually cloud what happens is if you take a platform as a service or a software as a service, that case what happens is that guy having the platform on infrastructure as a service has taken by somebody else. Or a SaaS guy could have taken the platform as a service from somebody else, and that guy would have taken that infrastructure of somebody else. And that somebody else will have somebody else also as a subcontractor. Like that, the somebody else's will keep going elsewhere. And that is where the responsibility, the shared responsibility model comes into a big strain. That is the reason why whenever you're drawing up a service level agreement, very clearly ask the vendor to see whether he is having any such a kind of a activity which is outsourcing, which actually have any impact on your operations. And if at all he has to change anybody, which should not be done with that, is your consent. So that need to be very clearly drafted in or encoded in the service level agreements. Apart from that, the auditor can also provide a value to the organization by, yes, please.
I have a question. I had a question on the escrow. What is software escrow? In the previous slide, you mentioned about the software escrow. I've heard about it a lot. It's like somewhat.
Okay, software escrow is something like this. Whenever you buy an application, you are buying only the executable version. The source code will not be given by the vendor. It will never be given. Now, the problem is that you are going to rely totally on the application provided by the vendor. And what if the vendor goes out of business? That means your support will be suffering, right?
Yes.
In that case, what you can do is that have the escrow agreement wherein both you and the developer or the seller can enter an agreement that in case the vendor goes out of the business and he will agree to give the latest version of the source code by paying some amount, by you paying some amount to him. That can be a marginal amount, they can negotiate. And usually escrow agreements are enforced by the lawyers or the bankers, wherein the money will be deposited by you to the banker and the source code, the medium, maybe USB drives or CD or whatever it is, will be deposited by the developer or the company selling the software with the banker. And when you both go to them saying that yes, we have this issue, now we can interchange the money. It is called escrow agreement.
Got it. Got it.
Very simple.
Thank you.
But globalization is also nowadays becoming a very, very, very common thing. Earlier days, I'm talking about the early 2000s or even late, let us say, last century, the connectivity was not that high. See, the mere fact that I'm taking the classes for all of you, and I think apart from US and Canada, Donald and Little Depo are coming from US and Canada, you're all split into various locations. Now, the mere fact that I'm able to address you and teach you on CISA itself shows that how the technology has evolved over a period. It's what I'm doing is clear about globalization itself, sitting in one place. In the beginning, somebody rightly said the pandemic has taught how the IT is enabling us. Whether pandemic or no pandemic, people are working from home. And the connectivity, that is the technology has made it happen. So the globalization, earlier days, if you want to sell your product, it's very, very difficult. Maybe you can do a marketing within your city, within your state, or within your country. Very rarely you can go outside unless you have the money power to do that. And you have to set up the offices in those locations, and you have to do so many activities are there. Nowadays, if you look at with the advent of internet, I'm sitting in my own place at my own home. I can market my product by having a website and having my kind of, let us say, marketing, digital marketing done. I can reach people at remote corners of the world. And that is the power of globalization, the global audience. But when it comes to the globalization in the sense of having your own organization, having opening branches or activities in other organizations, you have to consider so many things. The number one, let us say, demon now everybody are facing is GDPR. Apart from that, many rules and regulations individually for the organizations within the local locations, the local laws and regulation, local people's culture. Then again, the local telecommunication issues, cross-border, cross-cultural issues. An auditor can add a, let us say, a stellar role in this by understanding the all these requirements and put up a, let us say, suggest some kind of a control so that the globalization practice can be a success. Apart from that, let us look at the outsourcing and the third-party audit reports. So if you look at whenever we go for an outsourcing, one thing we should understand as an auditor is that like what kind of a control posture, security posture that the third party is having, that service provider is having, mainly cloud computing. See, you go and ask the cloud computing provider, ask them to give their security report, or ask them that you would like to do an audit on them. They're not going to allow you because it's not only that they are going to do the service for you, they are actually going to do the service for many clients. So what happens in this case? They may feel that like while you do your audit, you may also discover some secrets about your competitor, which is actually having the data in their sectors. So nobody would like to allow that. But at the same time, it is once on a trust model. I mean, I'm not going to cover that. It's not part of our portion. It is something related to cloud computing. A CCA service, actually, the designation, the audit, the subject, the certification covers that. It's a kind of a trust model. That is, you can say trust. Then you can say like this one. Then let us say transparency, trust. There's something, the 3T something they talk about. One of them is like having your SSAE 18 reports. The standards of, let us say, the statement of standards on attestation engagements. Attestation engagements are nothing but like assurance engagement, like the big four or the consultancy firms providing that. Like what they provide, you call them, you ask them to review your operations and they provide a report. And that is called attestation engagements. So usually these are all done by, in America, it's done by the CPAs, the Certified Public Accountants. In India, the Chartered Accountants do that. So technical auditors can also do that. Nowadays, CPAs also becoming technically strong. So this particular initiative of statements of standards and attestation engagement is actually taken up by the AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. They have developed a standard and which is becoming industry standard now. Many organizations like Cloud Security Alliance, then maybe many organizations coordinate with this AICPA, that SSAE 18 requirements, and accordingly the joint standard is developed. And on that basis, there are various types of audits and reports. SOC 1 report, SOC 2 report, and SOC 3 reports are this thing. Service organization controls. That is service operator, the third party service providers operations, the control. Service operations controls is what we are talking about, SOC. The control which is provided by the third parties is what we are going to assess in the case of SOC. And what are the things to be reviewed by the third party service provider is codified in the 3 numbers, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 talks about the financial well-being, financial, let us say, the transactions, and mainly they have something called GLBA. I think I don't have an exact expansion for that particular thing. It's based on the financial compliance. And the SOC 2 is mainly about they have 2 reports, SOC 2 type 1, SOC 2 type 2. The SOC 2 type 2s are the ones which are mainly for cloud. That talks about the security control within the cloud provider's environment and whether they have the base level of a security available or not. Nowadays, the Cloud Security Alliance have something called a STAR Alliance STAR program, where it is a security trust assessment and risk or something like that. And they have a registry wherein the cloud providers or the service provider provide their compliance reports where the customer can look at the report to see whether the required controls are there or not. So this thing should be the auditor should have a very clear understanding of this SOC 1 and 2, 3 reports. And all you have to do is that like try to get into Cloud Security Alliance called CSA And if you go to their website, you have a lot of information about not only on the Cloud Security Alliance, they have something called the Cloud Control Metrics (CCM), and also we have something called Cloud Star, the C Star, China Stars. There will so many things are there. You can just learn them also. So this, the auditor should be aware. So the auditor should aware where to get these reports, how to analyze the reports. Request all of you to please mute your. So apart from that, additional third-party audit reports such as penetration tests and security assessment can also be looked up by an auditor. But again, this SOC 1, SOC 2 type 2 reports are highly independent. That is, the auditors are absolutely independent. But if they have additional reports like a penetration test and all, again, the objectivity of the audit is a questionable. Again, on what context that particular penetration test be done? Because usually the cloud providers or a third-party service provider will not allow you to launch your own red team activities or red teaming on them. When I say red teaming, like a vulnerability scanning, port scanning, network intrusion scanning, or even penetration tests, etc. These are usually the activities which are done by the offensive security. They call it nowadays. They call it like red teaming. The blue team, they call it opposite, is the one for the defenders. They try to keep off ward of the attacks better. So this is some kind of a terminology given in the IT security world. So this particular, let us say, penetration tests or any vulnerability assessments, how far they are independent, the auditor should evaluate before believing those reports. So the third party assessment should be performed by independent, objective, and competent third parties. Then how to obtain this report, review it, and present the result to the management for the further action should be the auditor's responsibility. As I told you, like there are many things available, like when it comes to cloud, the Cloud Security Alliance and that SSE 18 AICPS reports of the standard form. Now let us talk about the cloud governance. See, cloud governance, if you look at, let us imagine, forget the cloud for the time being. Now imagine that you are having an IT department in premises, and when you have that, you have to ensure that IT is aligned with the business. Right from the beginning, we are seeing that all the IT activities should be supporting the business, and you have to ensure that the systems are secure, and you have to ensure that the risk is managed. And do you think it's an easy job to do that? It is challenging even when you are having everything inside your premises. Just imagine that half of them are, most of them are outside your organization, somewhere in the cloud, somewhere nobody knows where it is. Then what kind of issue you are looking at? So sometimes many organizations, what they do when they try to embrace cloud is that they try to tinker with their policies to accommodate the cloud computing, which is a grave error, because the cloud governance is extremely or entirely different from your normal IT governance. So as I told you, for example, like you are trying to, let us say, go to a SaaS. You are actually your organization. Let us say you are the, let us say XYZ Limited. You are the, they call it the CSC, Cloud Service Customer. Now you are contracting for a service provider, a SaaS provider. Software as a service is a CSP, Cloud Service Provider. Now this is the, at the surface, it is what you see. It is an outsourcing arrangement. Well and good. There is a service level agreement. Well and good. There is a security agreement. Well and good. Now the question is that, like, when it comes to the control on the security or the accountability, they call it a shared services model. Things which are from your side, that is the CSP side, customer side, something is from your CSP, that is provider side. Is it? How many providers are there? Now SaaS provider, this guy would have taken the SaaS and he has put his application and he may be doing the DevOps or the DevSec or whatever you can call it, and if cloud native, it's a cloud native, completely on cloud. And he would have done from another CSP, cloud service provider, he is having a platform as a service. Now that means whatever his responsibility is again shared between this guy and this guy. This is called a cloud discovery or cloud responsibility discovery. You have to discover one by one. Now this PaaS guy, which is a platform as a service, they have the operating system to run the applications. This is where your DevOps happens, development and operation happens. Now, is it done here? Let us look at this guy. This PaaS guy, PaaS guy, have taken. Again, he is a CSE. This guy is a CSE, cloud service customer for this CSP. There's another layer. Now, this guy can be a CSE customer for, he would have taken as an infrastructure as a service from another guy. Now, that means there is a shared responsibility. This shared responsibility here is shared between many parties. Does it stop here? This guy also would have contracted with another cloud provider for the DevOps purposes. And that developer, DevOps developer would have another source elsewhere or a platform elsewhere that becomes like that. If you look at the metrics, just goes beyond your control. All of you can understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
So this is what we are trying to talk about when it comes to the cloud governance. Don't worry, you're not going to get any questions what I'm explaining to you. I'm just telling you that cloud is not that simple way as you look at. There are hundreds, there's huge confusions are there inside when you start going inside. And only one thing which you have not even talked about is what we say is like the organization directly contracting with the source provider. Well and good, no problem. IT is taking service from some source provider. You know, cloud is that as long as like you like Azure, I'm just saying AWS. Anybody is having a AWS account. All you need is a web browser, connectivity, internet connectivity. You can access whatever service you want to take. Then it's going to be billed in dollars. Fine. There's a guy customer here that is an employee sitting in the department in XYZ company, and he is having an account in AWS, and he is taking some kind of a program or some kind of a sales application directly bypassing this IT, going to another cloud, and I'm putting that in his environment. What is this? Can it happen or not? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, can it happen?
Yes, sir. Shadow
Yes,
IT.
yes.
Shadow
This
IT,
is
sir.
called a shadow IT. Absolutely right. This is called shadow IT. Very simple. You are having your own, let us say, Dropbox account. You are having a paid storage account of 2 TB or taken from some service provider like Dropbox or let us say somebody else, Google Drive or whatever it is. Now you are storing all your confidential organization data in that. Nobody in your IT know about it. Is it a shadow IT or not? How many security issues you are having? Assume that you are putting all your PIA data without encryption in the Google Drive. What will happen? This is what you have to look at. So that means you should have a separate policies like the goal setting, policy and standard development, defining the roles and responsibilities, and managing this should be separately considered for your cloud computing environment. So many nowadays, a lot of tools are available. Like you have a, let us say, CASB is one way to do that. That cloud access, what do you call the cloud services broker, something like CASB they call it. These things can they discover, they can actually have a tools that can query the entire organization network to identify any rogue or shadow IT services are there, and they can catalog it, I can bring it to normalcy. There are many things available. They can provide encryption services, they can provide, in fact, you can, CASB can be linked into your DLP and you can ensure that they can provide value to the business. But these are the controls, but to understand the control, you should have a right in the beginning, the policies and the strategy and the standards. So the cloud governance is always going to be something which is not to be clubbed with your normal IT governance. That's what I would try to say. So apart from that, the governance in outsourcing. So ensure the contractual viability through continuous review, improvement, and benefit gain to both the parties. As I told you, the service provider is not there to do a charity, or not you are there to give a charity to the service provider. Both of you should be benefited by that. In the longer run, there should be benefit for both the parties. If any of them are not seeing a benefit, there's going to be a termination. And there has to be a clear governance schedule, monitoring, review in the contract. And ensure that operating level, the businesses are considered, and talk to the business to see whether they're getting what they want. Because the business are the silent parties, they can break the contracts. Identify and manage all the stakeholders, that is the business, the IT, and the third-party service provider, and the relationship and the expectations. and clear roles and responsibilities. I say we clearly saw that in the previous model. You should do this, I should do this. This is your side, this is my side. And if it is any gray area, we'll negotiate it and put the proper things in place. There should be a proper management, dispute management clauses, issue escalation clauses, and demand management and service delivery. And allocate resources, people and money, expenditure and service consumption in response to prioritization needs. And continuously evaluate the performance. SLA should be constantly evaluated to ensure that the value is given to the business. And communicate across all the stakeholders on an ongoing basis. This is extremely important, the communication. If you don't communicate properly, that means you think that everything is rosy, but something may be happening elsewhere. Apart from that, the monitoring of the third-party service provision include performance levels that is taken care by your service level agreement, your service reports, then security incidents, audit trails and other security events, etc. Probably they may have their own SAEM tools to get the logs, analyze them, etc. And you resolve and manage any identified problems. And of course, cloud also can change, service providers also can change. The services offered by the service providers can also change. Service providers or yourself can physically change your locations. You should have an explicit change management process to ensure that the changes are adequately managed. Next is let us look at the performance monitoring and reporting. So if you look at, as I told you, IT performance should not be limited only to the financial angle. As I told you, IT is a technology backbone enabler to the organization. So the evaluation should include the business contribution, the IT's contribution to the business, but that should not be limited to the financial. Of course, financial has to be there, but it should not be only to the financials. So how does the IT actually perform against the strategic business and IT plan? Whether the IT strategy as designed by the steering committee been achieved by or not. That is what we are going to see in the IT balance scorecard. And how does the IT able to provide support to the business by having a proper risk management in place and ensure that compliance with the laws and regulations like surveillance, the HIPAA, CCPA, then you have the PCI DSS, GDPR, all those things need to be complied by IT. And these are all external. Internally, the users, whether they're happy, user satisfaction, and whether the key IT processes, including solution delivery, or the, let us say, and also the process delivery are as per the requirement, whether in internal SLAs they have been taken care. And how does that IT is looking at the future? Whether IT is geared enough to understand the requirements and what are the evolutions happening in the industry or IT, and be able to provide a future-looking services to you. All these things are the ones that has to be considered in your performance measurement or performance monitoring. So when you look at IT is a process. So there, whenever you have a process, immediately what you should do is a process improvement. The same way we saw when you talk about the governance improvement through the CMMI, the IT of performance optimization should act through a continuous quality improvement measures. So continuous improvement measures like PDCA and maybe comprehensive best practices like ITIL or a frameworks like a COVID, etc. can be used. So plan, do, check and act is a very popular methodology by which it is easily understandable by many people so that it's becoming a very big hit. So what are the things, what you want to achieve? Put a goal for yourself. This is what I want to achieve. This is the current level, the strategy, that is the future level. And have an objective clear. And ensure that the process are developed, that is plan the process and implement the process, do activity. Implement the plan, collecting the data for charting and analysis purposes to see whether I'm achieving objective or not. Check, study the results from the do phase. Then looking for any deviations on corrective act, course corrective. Then come back again. If any requirements are there, come back here. Again plan. Then this particular cycle keeps continuing, and every time you correct it, you set another objective. So incrementally, you keep improving yourself objectives so that the endeavor is that you are not going to be satisfied ever. Is you can continuously you have to keep on improving the processes. So there are other various technologies are there. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to cover this for you because you're not going to get any questions from there. ISACA doesn't ask any questions on any specific tools and techniques. So there is a After so long, I'm going to ask a question for you. Sorry.
Is it B? Continuous improvement target are being monitored.
Perfect. So the idea behind the quality management system itself is to continuously improve the quality. That is what I described in the previous slide about the PDCA. So the focus is mainly to see whether the PDCA is done and whether the improvements are continuous improvement targets are being monitored. Right answer. So now let us come to the IT balance scorecard. I had been talking to you about that all the time. See, when you talk about the scorecard, I'm sure all of you would have been dreading your scorecard. Sorry, I used to dread myself during my schooling days. I'm not a very bright kid. So what happens is that, like, you will be getting the marks which is scored in the examination, maybe 5 subjects, 7 subjects, or how many subjects you have taken. And the ranking will be given based upon the overall performance compared to your performance compared to the class performance. But the only thing that is going to be ranked at that point of time is about your ability to read, retain, and reproduce. The better you are in memory and rote learning, Ratamar they call it, you are better. But you may be a very good athlete, you may be a very good artist, you may be a very good orator, you may be a very good, let us say, anything else. How does it come to bring in? Apart from that, I may be very good in education, I may be the topper. Every time when I get an exam, I may get 100 out of 100. But half the time I'm sick, I'm in the hospital. I'm not having a right good body. I'm not a well-built person. I don't have the, let us say. So like that, if you look at an individual's performance is only on a one single angle is monitored. Of course, it is the Indian education system, we can't avoid it. But same way, if you look at IT, you should not evaluate on one single angle. That is finance. There are many other things that IT can provide that goes beyond providing the financial benefit. But at the end, everything will actually invariably will result in finance. So apart from that, finance, what else you should actually measure? Customer satisfaction. Internal customers, external customers, including regulatory compliances. This is very important. Apart from that, the internal operation process, how well you are able to innovate and ensure that you are able to, let us say, bring the changes or internal business process improvement so that the business is actually run faster, accurate, without faster, accurate, and in the sense like, with the youth satisfaction. Then finally, the ability to innovate. How can the IT in the future-oriented angle can keep improving the business processes by which the organization itself continuously keeps increasing, improving by itself. So that is what you call the future ability. That's the ability to innovate. So you should look at the customer satisfaction angle, the business process angle, and the future looking at angle. All the 3 angles apart from the finance angle has to be looked at. That is the balance scorecard. So usually if you look at the IT balance scorecard to succeed, you should clearly set an objective to the business IT department. And that actually you should set a target. You should say these are the activities to be done. This many improvement activities, but for example, new technology has to be introduced. You need to ensure that projects are to be finished in time. This much customer satisfaction index you should achieve. These are the targets. Who should fix it? Can anyone tell me who should fix the targets for the let us say balance scorecard? Who are the users of the IT?
Business.
Steering committee. So
Yeah.
steering committee will fix it because the steering committee will know the strategy or they know the objective of the business. On the basis of the business objectives, they set up the target for the IT and put that in the 4 domains: financial angle, customer satisfaction angle, that is the business resilience or the process angle, and the ability to innovate angle. So they set the target. They set the KPI for the IT as a measures of your, let us say, your balance scorecard. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we say that the balance scorecard is a strategic alignment tool?
Yes, we can say that.
Exactly, it's a strategic alignment tool. So that means there's a consensus, foster the consensus among the stakeholders because it is set by the steering committee. and at the same time demonstrate the effectiveness of the activity, because these four angles is going to be measured by the who? By the steering committee themselves. We are the ones who set the target. And also facilitate the communication about the performance, risk, and capabilities of IT, because that is what you are going to be evaluating. Next, another question for you.
D.
B, sir.
D.
B for boy.
Agrees to subject to external security reviews.
It's the
Anybody else?
compliance with the security policies of the organization.
D.
Nothing
D.
compared to B. When there should be an independent external security review. Without the independent security review, you will never get the unbiased requirements. Understood? So we always saw that in the previous when you talk about outsourcing, right? The auditor should always look at any independent auditors. So agrees to subject to external review like a SOC 2. That is what we are looking at. Next question for you.
B, sir. B for boy.
B. Defines key performance.
Define key
performance.
performance indicator.
Indicators.
Exactly. So without you have to first set a KPI. Only then you can evaluate the BSc. Perfect. Now let us get into the last slides, couple of slides of your second domain. After finishing this one, it's not a very big one. And once we finish this, we'll take a break. And after that, when we come back, I'm going to have a 50 questions for you. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let us now look at the quality management. So when you talk about the quality management, managing the quality within the IT department, whether it's HR, whether it's a process, whether DRP, BCP, everything. But before that, we'll also talk about the quality assurance and quality control. See, there are two distinct functions, but there are two different arms of the same activity. First and foremost, when you have to ensure that the quality is present in a process, you should educate them what is a quality and how it should be done, and precisely what is done by the assurance team. They implement the process, educate the developers, educate the IT people about the standards and the requirements regarding the quality assurance, what is supposed to be there, and ensure that it is done. And randomly selecting, that is checking some activities to see whether these practices which are supposed to be implemented by the QA is actually being done or not, is a quality control. This is the simplest explanation. So a quality assurance is a planned and a systematic pattern of all actions, necessary to provide adequate confidence that an item or a product conforms to established technical requirements. So a quality assurance helps the IT department to ensure that the personnel are following the prescribed quality processes. That is, they set up the processes and they train the people and they will guide them to ensure that they are following that particular quality processes. Whether that is really being done or not is going to be checked by the quality control. So that is the observation technique, and activity is used to fulfill the requirements for the quality. So quality check or the control is responsible for conducting the tests or reviews to verify and ensure that the software is free from the defects and meet the user expectations. Technically, this could be done at various stages of the development. In the SDLC, the third domain, we are going to talk about the system as a development life cycle. It could be done at various stages, but it should be done before the system is production ready or moved to production. So the quality check control will help to ensure that the programs and documentation adhere to the standards and naming conventions. So in short, the quality assurance functions within an organization is in charge of developing, promulgating, and maintaining the standards for IT function. So they are the ones who promulgate, they develop, and maintain it. Whereas the control group actually assists by periodically checking the accuracy and authenticity of the input, processing output of the various applications, and whether they adhere to the quality assurance standards. So the quality in an organization can be done in software development, maintenance and implementation, in acquiring the hardware and software, the quality in day-to-day operations, service management, ITIL, information security, HR management within IT, and general administration of IT. Everywhere the quality management can be part of your requirements. Next question for you.
C.
Any other answer?
C.
So,
C.
first you are going there to audit. First, what you should do?
D.
D, correct. Because all
Yeah.
the standards that have been adopted by the organ. Only then on that basis only you can audit them, right?
Answer
when-
is D, sir.
Yes. Agree.
So because all the standards that have been adopted by the organization. On that basis, you are going to evaluate them. So answer is D for Delta. So ladies and gentlemen, we successfully completed the second domain and the time is exactly 8:31. Let us take a 15 minutes break. We reassemble and at that time I'll be giving you the questions. And before we break off for the break, rather we are going to break off. The ground rules are very clear for the examination. I've got 50 questions. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to ask you anything. Each and every one of you, whether you're taking a paper or a pencil or you're using Excel sheet, also whatsoever it is. Now, because if I ask the question, only 6 or 7 maximum are answering, the others are silent. I don't want this to happen. I'm going to be silent. I'll be showing the answer questions in the screen. Every one of you are going to write the question number and answer A, B, C, D or something. And individually, you have to send it to me. Either you can put in the group or you can personally message me. That's up to you. But if I look at here, how many people are there in the group today? 20 are there. Like Rahman, Abdul. I think there are some people who are not able to understand who are there. Okay, anyway, let us discuss about that later. So all these people, everyone should be given the answers to me. And only if when I get all the 20 responses, only then I will give you the answers. So answers I'm not going to give it today. So the quicker all of you are answering me, the quicker I'm going to give the correct answers to you. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if I'm asking you the question, only 4 or 5 you could answer. Others are going to be silent watchers. I don't want that. Each and everyone have to give the answers to me. You can put it in the WhatsApp, mail me. So put in the WhatsApp, send a message directly to me. Write in the notebook, print the photograph and send it. I just don't mind. Howsoever you want to do it, but do it. Got it?
Yeah, it's a fair ask screening. Good.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because I want everybody to work on the process, right?
Correct. I agree.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Now 8:33. Take a 15 minutes break. Maybe we can take another extra 2 minutes break. So 8:40 local Indian time. 17 minutes from now we can take assembly back. Is it okay, Bayo?
Okay, Srini.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.